we do have a number of things that would be really interesting to know, and also for you guys, about how do you deal with these scenarios, what's actually important for you to get to work with when you're dealing with a migration. And this is all of these different things. We'll try to go a little more deep into the content and what you have of options for this. So first, I think you would need to, or will be looking at the assessment, what you can do in that perspective, what makes sense. And if you have questions, comments along the way, put them into the Q&A section, then we'll be using that as a comment section. After you have performed the assessment, you will be, did I mix up? Test the migration. That's the wrong one. Oh, okay. So this was the one, custom migration. Let me just see if yes, and how to get started. So obviously there's about testing. We want to look at the migration and we want to test it, and maybe something on the common options here. So wait. There. Okay, so question. Did you attend last week's poll? Just a short. So we have so DevOps. We covered DevOps last week. It is not obviously not important, but it is a large part of this setup, because I do recommend that you be using it for migration, because it is it is going to take a lot. So a lot of you did not see it. So let me just publish this and let's get on. So good. I guess we'll not cover it. We will share the replay later that you can see, and this is obviously interesting when dealing with migrations. So a little about FIGAF. We started out 7 years ago building a tool to automate testing, and for PI then we added a lot of other capabilities, and finally we added capability to migrate PI from PI to cloud integration. When I say PI, I mean both PI and process orchestration, but we are only focusing on the message processing time. So we are not doing anything with BRM, business rules management, BPMN, these kind of things. That are different scenarios. We could probably do something on automating migration of BPMs, but the result we will come up with is far from ideal. So I think it does not really make a lot of sense for us to cover those things. But this is, so we are focusing on building tools to automate these processes, making it easier for you as a developer to focus on your integration work. So what I wanted to say is, we do have a tool that will allow you to get started for free to understand how you can deal with your migration process. It's easy to deploy in your B2P account. If you don't want to do a proof of concept, you probably want to have it on your laptop, because it simplifies the steps if you do not need to provision a B2P sub account or add there. But anyway, the effort required once you go live with it is really small. It's like 10 minutes or 15 minutes to install the tool in B2P. So it's not a lot, but requiring you have the requests. And then it's easy to upgrade to the full option, both with the DevOps migration, and then it is obviously you need to figure out how this tool works together with your usage of what's called SAP's product, and how that all works out. Just a little where we are deploying the tool. So normally we just recommend B2B Cloud Foundry, where you can run it as a separate Java instance or Docker image. There it connects with the cloud connected to your on-premise system, and then it interacts with the cloud integration there. when we need to talk about migration, I'm speeding up quite a bit, so I just need to slow down. I think so. A migration contains a lot of different steps inside it. Some of it you can do at one part of time. Other things you need to do separately or mix in between these different scenarios. And I think that is one of the things that you need to figure out. What is the ideal mix for these scenarios, and how does this work? We do have, so here we have the part about you doing the migration and figuring out how this all works out. In here you would have, for instance, the ability to do an assessment and understand what your current landscape is. You do have the part about testing or creating test data. Then you want to manage the migration, and we want to also test the iFlows. And finally, we will migrate the iFlows to we'll migrate the iFlows, and then we'll do the testing, and then we will be managing the process. So there is a lot of different steps as a part of this to make it easy for you to work with these scenarios. And today I want to cover all of these different boxes, what you actually can do and what makes sense for you. And I hope, I guess maybe that's also a little on where you are on the migration journey. That could be interesting, because my guess is you are more in the exploring phase. Does this make sense to start a migration? Because if you had already completed it, you probably would not attend this, because then it would be kind of a waste. And if you're in progress, the value still exists, and you would probably be able to see, okay, so these are the parts that we can improve on and deliver more results on. But obviously, it's a little of a difference of where you are in the journey. So cool. I'll just say publish the results. So more. Okay, so yes, considering planning, I guess that is a little of a mixture on where you are, and I guess that also ties into the budget. And I hope you that in the process still would see a lot of value in this, and maybe have run into some of the frustrations that we will be covering in today, and say, okay, this would actually solve the problems. And if you have comments, some of the challenges that you face, just put them into the Q&A, and we will also be covering this. I do think we do have time to cover the questions that you have as a part of this setup. Good. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we just want to cover is the migration overview, and we'll come back to this. The idea with this was, when we started out creating tools to build migration, it was like, take this ICO, migrate it, and then the process would be that you somehow needed to remember all of this information, have it in a separate spreadsheet, all of these different things that you can do process-wise, but just add a lot of overhead and a lot more complexity and a lot more places where it could go wrong. So if one person had migrated scenario ABC, no one else needs to migrate that again, because you are fully aware that this has been migrated, it has been transported, and everything works as you would expect it to do. So in that perspective, I think it makes sense to have like a one place where you have all of these things, and where you can see what you have migrated, where you can create test data, where you can create all of these artifacts that make sense for you. So that's the idea with it. We want to have a place for all your actions. That is important for the migration, that the PI objects, what is the CPI objects, how many test cases do we have on both the PI and CPI, and is this iFlow in production? Because that is the thing that really matters. Okay, we have moved it to production, then no need to do more about it, and we are happy. And as a project manager, that just simplifies your life to know where this is. So yeah, our focus is to make tools that make it easier for you to do your job and focus on the important part. Okay. Then the assessment, and I guess this comes before all the other things. This is, well, it started out with the idea, okay, we need to do a migration, but we have no idea about what's the scope, who can we assign to this, and how long time will this migration take. So and then I heard from some clients that said, or some consultancies, that we need to do or we have requested to do a proposal for 100, 200 iFlow integration. How much will that cost? And if you do not really get much more information than that, it is, yeah, I think they would pay this, and the other consultants would take this. So if we do it here, we're probably safe. We have no clue about it, but it is a place to start and get some experience about these things. And that is not a reliable process for no parties. You want to, as a consultant, you want to know what you're actually bidding in on. You want to have a easy, understandable sheet that says, this is the current landscape, this is how, and then you can do your assessment and figure out how do we actually deal with these things. And obviously, the idea here is that it will give you information about your current landscape. And then you need to design, you can also combine it with SAPs. They are also collecting some data on these things. Maybe that one is better for you, or maybe ours is better. We have designed it. We do not give you an estimate what the migration will cost in this, which is, and I think this is probably a part of, well, the assessment as a tool does not make sense as a standalone. You cannot just, let me just show you what this is. The Excel sheet that you will generate from the tool, and obviously you will then go through this and you will see we got whatever, how many interfaces. Let me just show it in real life. I have it out here. So here we have the assessment. Here we can first see the overview, what has been migrated and what is in production. And here we can see all of these different scenarios. So even if you have PI, this is really a good tool to understand, okay, so what is my current landscape? How many adapters modules do I have? How many senders? What are the adapters? What are the different mappings? So you can see all of the different mappings here. Or here we have the message mappings, we have the XSLTs, Java. So you can easily see in here how many of these different adapters you have. We can see if we're using function libraries or if there's parameters in. Something that makes the migration more challenging, and you need to figure out how to handle these things. We have the in and output messages, and then we have the receiver systems, and we have the protocols, modules, and then we have the number of messages that has been processed on this interface for the last month or the current month. All values that make it easier to make a decision about what you want. But you still need to go through a workshop and figure, okay, so this is what we have. What is it that we want to be building out? And I think that is the part that still will require time for you to figure out how much is this going to cost in time for us to work with these scenarios. So yes, any questions or comments on this assessment? or the overview, I think that is a good place to take them now. So just put them into the Q&A. I have 1 or 2 more slides on it. So the idea is here is obviously it is about giving you an overview of your current landscape. It is about giving you some insight about what you know. And I think one of the part here is that we should probably be realistic. There it is incomplete. There is probably some things that we could improve on this to give you some more highlights. So for instance, when you're talking about function libraries, some function libraries can be migrated with some of the different tools and techniques that we will be sharing on later. Other is where, for instance, you're using some of the limitations with the 2 methods. There it will be challenging to work with the tool, and you'll run into some problems, and you need to be careful about which of these scenarios that you're using for these things. So that is, well, we could probably add some more complexity to the report and give you more insight about your function libraries. There, this function library is okay. This function library cannot be migrated with this or this technique as we know it. But well, this is also something that is going to evolve over time, making some of these decisions different. But anyway, I don't know how many function libraries you have. You probably are using 5-10 different function libraries in most cases. And then look at the adapters. I did create a YouTube video. I don't know, can we put this into the can you put that into the chat? Where I go through a lot more about how do you actually read this this Excel sheet, how do you generate it, and what you actually can read from it. And this is about look at the adapters, how it handles the splitting, how it handles messages, etc. All of these different things that is important whenever you're designing a new flow. So I will probably also share that one with you, but it is an important part of. Could you share it, or it is in the Q&A section? Yes, so it is in the Q&A section. There you can see this this YouTube video and read it. Okay, then once you have an idea of your current landscape, you need to start migration. And are there actually questions here? I forgot. Sorry, I forgot is there a sufficient detail in estimating how to get so let me just see here. So yes, as we talked so it is a catalog. We will not give you a ballpark of this. So obviously we can go through and say this is a day's work per interface, but anyway, and I think that is one of the challenging things. So how are you deciding to test? How are you deciding to move this into production? How are you deciding to govern all of these different things? This is the main part of this this question that you need to understand. Okay, so this is actually the challenge. And I think the best is to go through it, understand what you have, and then use the tool, migrate 10 different interfaces of different types and different scenarios. And based on this, you do have a good understanding about the scope and challenges, what works, what does not work. So that, I guess, is the main focus of these things. So is there one question? No. Yes, so that is the question for the assessment. So yes, go through it, understand it, put it into your favorite BI tool and go through it. Okay. Next up is the migration, and this is obviously also one of the things that is going to take some time to go through. SAP obviously have their tool. I think ours is better, but I guess I am supposed to be saying that. And we do have some differences later about how the tools is different. So the first thing is that we read the IQs and the receiver determination. Based on this, we fetch the input and well, yeah, all the different scenarios and receivers from it. So we do support 7.1 and above and receiver determinations. So that obviously means that some of the migration will be easier because the tool support it. SAP says they will be delivering also a 7.31 and 7.4 version of their tool to support IQs. But if you have receiver determinations, ours is the only tool that will support that. Yeah. Once we have read this information, we will determine what are the receivers, what are the different split in. We will look at the communication channel, how to deal with these things, and then we'll convert the mappings, including function libraries, and then we'll generate the iFlow. So yeah, we do have something about advanced filtering. We can say if we have an ICO with these scenarios, we will fetch it in this. We will only send it to this receiver right now, and then we'll do the other at a later point in time. Or if, for instance, you have backup scenarios that is not required in this setup, you will just not migrate that one, and that is really easy to filter these things out. Then we can look at mappings conversion, what can be done there. We'll generate the iFlow. All of the iFlows are generated by our algorithms, so it makes it easy for you to handle the scenarios without needing to perform a lot of actions on it. And then we have an intelligent retry, where we will add retry mechanism in, but only if the message fails, and this will save you something on the transactions, because as I see it, you don't need to retry all messages. You only need to retry a message or put it into the GMS queue if the message fails. There can obviously be a scenario where you say, okay, we want to put everything on a synchronous queue, and then we want to process it from, or a GMS queue, and then we want to process it from there. But I think in general, if it is a normal interface, you just want to deliver it, and then you want to have the retry process. And then obviously we are improving the tool based on feedback, and I think that is also some of the features that makes it a little easier. If you have a problem, we are able to deliver a fix pretty rapidly. So yeah, 1-2 weeks to deliver a feature depending on the contract and the scope of this setup. That means that you will then be able to continue with your migrations. I sometimes get asked what is the difference between the tooling and what we can actually do, and here is some of the features, at least when you look at the message mappings and the functions that we do have here. We recently added the sender receiver parameter. We have parameters with mappings. These work quite similar. We have support for multi-mapping so your message mapping will work, and the iFlow will split the messages. Function libraries is also converted. We have two different approaches for this one. We have the Groovy, where we will be using our own conversion of Groovy, and this has some advantages if you have parameters in your message, and if you have all values of a queue, then that method would work better. And you can also use the new one where you're using SAP's function library object. So that would then depend on which scenario that you're using to decide how do you want to fix this scenario. And then we also have, for instance, if you have an RFC lookup, we can also add that as a user-defined function that you then need to fill in. So you will need to create the code, but it is pretty simple in most cases to fill in this data. There's some other differences, and I think some of these are quite major. So SAP uses some fixed templates, and that means it is easy for them to deliver a new template that handles these different things. But the challenge is that if you have a scenario that is using a different combination, then that falls outside of the iFlow, it becomes pretty challenging, or that mapping will not work. And yeah, we generate iFlow based on interfaces. In SAP's tool, I think, well, at least last time I tried, there was a limitation that you cannot work with it if you had an iFlow that split the messages. Then yeah, no need to work more on it. And then the way we're doing communication channels is that we have a box or an XSLT that will allow you to take your existing PI communication channel and use that for migration. That means if you have like a template, you have already created an iFlow that shows you this is how the object should look like, then you can look at those scenarios. Okay. That is for later. Okay, so I do really enjoy showing demos because I think that is the most interesting part. And there's always the challenge that these things would fail and they would not work. Okay, so let us take this example here. We have found in our assessment, and maybe let me just find this in the assessment here. So, I just right here. So here we have one iFlow. We can see that this ICO or PI object is on 2 lines, which means this is a splitting one. We can see it has the same inbound communication channel. It has using HTTP post. It has one that is using message 4. Message 1 that then is using a function library where there's a parameter, and the other one is a message 4 where there's a multi-mapping. One is a file, and the other one a file, and the other one is SOAP. We can see it's FTP here. We have the communication channels here, and we have some test cases that has been processed. I would actually have expected that we did have some here, but maybe it's just when I created it, or what is the scope of the last message one. So this is the interface we want to create, and this is right up here, and we select it here. We go through and we select the agent, a package, and then we select the iFlow, which is 829. Just so we have a simple way to deal with this. We can select profile types. We have a single process and we have a multi-local process. And this is the normal one we would recommend in most cases. Here in the local process, you can then select GMS, and this is the GMS retry that you selected. And then we'll come up with a queue name. We can then perform a check, and this check will then check what resources do we have. Is this possible to migrate, and what is going on here? So the first thing we see here is we have that it is these sender communication channels. These are the different XSLT that it will convert these on. We can go in and we can say we do not want to send it to this receiver. So let me just show you what. So if I do a check now and click preview, we can see that the message is split into 2 different iFlows here. If we have, for instance, added this one and do a check, we can see it is only sending it into 1 message. So this makes the process a little easier for you to manage if you want to split it into multiple different scenarios. Questions, just put them into the Q&A and comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these things. So we'll do a check again, just to make sure we got all of these different scenarios. And here, yeah, we can select it. We can then select for each of the different objects, do we want to overwrite the object that we already have, or how do we want to handle this? So we can go in here, we can see if there's a local user-defined function for these things. And we do have that migrated 2 times. This would then connect to the function library. Or we can just say, hey, we want to use the override the shared artifact. So in the FigAff tool, we do keep a versioning of all of these different artifacts. So if you do make a change to some of these function library scripts and mappings inside of the tool, it will then update it next time that you're using it, and this makes the update process a lot simpler. But obviously, if you can use the built-in Groovy functions or function libraries, it is probably easy because it does have some advantages that you can use, like the container objects, etc. Yeah, we'll just reuse the shared objects. I think that's fine. Reuse shared objects. And then we're getting something here about that. It says here that there is the use of the container variable is in this function library. So this would be recommended to add to the process. We also get something about a check that this user exists in the landscape. So this is part of the channel communication. Here you can set them some notification that check that this exists, etc. And then we also check that we need to have this this FigAff migration script deployed. You can also create your own version of this, but it is just an info that needs to be there before this works. Oh, good. So now that's done, we'll just press check one more time. We will preview the iFlow. So here you can see all the different iFlows. But I just want to show you this in the migration view. So now it will handle it in the background, and you can then click to open this. So here we have the iFlow now. It has been migrated successfully. We have the channels that they have been connected correctly. Here we can see the splitting part, how that is behaving and what's going on there. And then we can see the error handling process here. So if a message fails up here, it will go to this exception handler. Here we will then save the payload, save it to the GMS, and then we have another process that go in and take the GMS message and process it from there. So that means that if the message failed, you do have an automated retry that will ensure that this message is being delivered. Normally, I would just do an edit, save as version, just to make sure we have a new version of it. I would then synchronize it back to the FigAff tool, like inform the FigAff tool that there's a new version of this. So we can see what are the difference, because we do create the iFlow in one object, but obviously there is changes happening that make sometimes that there is some differences in this, and we can easily see the differences between these two iFlows. So we can see that there is something on this where a part of the message process has been changed for some reason. I'm not sure what. There could be some of the other places where it is using or some changes in it. But if you did not have this, it would be really difficult to actually see these changes. So that's a part of the DevOps, that you do have full version change management process. Okay, so we did deploy it, hopefully. So now we have our iFlow, and let me just focus it on here. So let me just, so we can go in here and we can go here and we can record some messages from the PI system. Let me just filter it here. So we have it. So let me just say, okay, so we want to fetch some test data from the PI system. We select record messages, create a new test suite for this, fetch specific messages. There's some different ways you can create these test cases on, depending on what you scope and what you want to achieve with it. And here we are just creating the test data in a simple way. So now we're just fetching data, and now we have a test case here. We'll just create it, where we can run it on. That should be all good. So now we have created a test case that can run on PI, and we could obviously run it and we'll get some input about how this would run. So the next thing is we want to move this into our integration suite and be able to reuse the same in and output messages there. So let's just select this. We have it up here. We select migrate test case. We add it to the test suite we have. So it is going a little fast. Sorry, just want to give you a lot of insight about what it is. When you try it out, I do have a 1.5 hour video where I go through how do you set it up, how do you create these different things. So I guess we'll also be sharing that one in the video. So now I have a test case for the PI flow, and I can then see the input messages and the output messages. So let's just go here and check one of the input messages. Let's just, so we can see it, we will change the ID here to 99. And that means that we can go to our test, we can then run it. And when we run it, it will then send the messages into the system. And that means from up here, we should be able to see that these messages has been deployed and sent. Come on, update. Yeah, as you probably have seen, we have a nice collaboration with CPI Helper to work on these things. So now the messages has been sent and it will open the test case. The idea is obviously that we do not need to get into the CPI system, so it did take some time for it to send the messages and check that the iFlow was deployed. And this test-driven process also gives you some advantages, that you can go in and you can see how these messages was processed for these scenarios. So yeah, sometimes it is a little slow, the trace APIs that it's using here. Anyway, so let's see if we also got the message in here. So here we can see that we have received some messages. In here we are getting some diffs. So it says here that this iFlow here was incorrect, or there was a difference here. We can just say, yeah, that's fine. Just ignore that one. Process full comparison. And then the other alert that we are getting is that we received a message that was in the wrong sequence. So we received this one where we have been using this ID number as the key, so this does not match the value we have down here. But it is a way that you can go through and check these. So when we do a message split, we need to have a way that we can identify each individual messages. And I made a mistake about splitting on the or changing the ID. If I change the price, it would not be a problem. But anyway, I can go in and I can create a new test case based on the scenario. Update test case, drop all. So now we should have a new test case that we can run. That will then send messages in and give us all the details about what is going on. So now almost done on the migration. So now we can see we have a green light test case to cover all of these different things. Questions on the migration and how this tool will work, then just put them into the Q&A section. And I'll see if I can find them a little sooner. Good. So that was a little on the tool and what it can do, some of the differences, and I hope you saw how easy it is to use. So obviously the part about creating test cases can sometimes be a little challenging on the PI stack, because there is a lot of different variations about how you can create test cases, how you can run them. We are working on improving this, making it, giving you a better guide, because when you have connected the FIGAF system to your PI tool, the process becomes a lot easier and we know much more about it. We can guide you on how we think you should create the test case. But at the end of the day, this test case creation comes up to how you're going to deal with these scenarios. A question that popped up is also how do we handle EDI migrations and these kind of scenarios. And right now we have not supported this, but it is definitely something that should be fairly simple to support. So I do think that, yeah, we did some proof of concept some time ago where we changed the function libraries with the Groovy and added some small changes in, like removing the container objects. Some of these could probably be migrated with the newer function libraries, but there are something that is missing. This is that there is a difference in the XSD structure that is being created by Integration Content Advisor and the CPI versus the PI, and that means you need to convert the mappings. We have done that long time ago between CBurger, so it is CBurger and B2B add-on, so it is just about, it is a lot of magic from the development team to make these things work. But then it is possible, which should be possible, to migrate and convert all of these things together. We forgot to start the recording. Let's hope the other one worked. And then we have the TPM profile that trading partner management, we obviously need to figure out how to connect these things.
This webinar is being recorded.
Sorry. And then, we need to create a profile. So right now we just have one profile to handle some of these scenarios, and we need obviously to find a better way to improve on these things. And then our goal is to look for some projects that will show where we can be able to show these scenarios. Then we do come to testing, and I do think the number of errors that you will get in the migration projects will most likely be caught in an automated testing, because that is the place where you have the most changes in structure. So the structure would be changing, the way you're converting the XSDs, the function library may work differently. All of these different things is something if you can test it, it is much easier than just waiting until a partner can help you with the testing. And the Gartner is coming with the 60%. I do still believe that we cannot help you and reduce the overall project with 60% for the testing, but I think we can reduce the testing requirements quite a bit and improve the quality. Because if you just do an end-to-end test and the developers do not really grasp what they are looking for, it is going to be quite challenging to get these things to work. And we have this. So the faster you can test, the better, and the easier it is to have these scenarios running. We do have some automated test of your migration, and this was also what I showed you. We fetched some PO messages, we created the cloud integration, we sent it to CPI, and then we compared the result, ignoring timestamp, all of these different things, making sure that we had some test cases that we can continuously run whenever we make changes to the integrations. We did have a German consultancy using the tool to test AD interfaces last spring. And obviously, based on their input, we have been improving the tool to cover more scenarios, making the process a lot easier. And this was actually one of the things that we charged for, but now you can get for free as a part of this free migration edition. For the EDI migration, we also have a customer that has migrated over 100 interfaces with this, with minimal service requirements, and it seems like it has just been working smoothly, making them able to transport or integrate or test everything in a much smaller way, as a small, or as, well, not a small customer, but as a small team, transitioning a lot of things into production. We have seen the demo. Last week we did talk about the DevOps process, where the tool shows a lot more qualities, and there's right here there's 10 different tools as a part of this, making it the one tool that you would need for your full development process, without having to get a lot of other products in place to handle these scenarios. And then, yeah, you would be able to review what is going on, who's making which changes, etc. And this just simplifies the process. Yeah, we do have the DevOps, and this is about taking the iFlows that you migrated, moving them into production in a much more streamlined way, easier to govern, document what you've made of changes, who has approved these things, because I do think that you should have approvers on all of your integrations, at least so someone else can see what's going on and why are we doing these things. And then the test-driven development. So now you have created the test cases to run the migration, but you need to continuously be able to test whenever you're doing new development on these things, because the easier it is to test, the easier it becomes to manage and transport your integrations. So that, yeah, we do have three different ways that you can engage with us. So we do have the Migration Edition, and this is the recommended place to start. You can also take the trial edition. That will give you a month to evaluate all the tools and components that we have to manage this. Then we have the Migration Edition, and this is the part that is recommended by SAP. And this is where you would be able to be able to test the integration and see how it's going on, how you can manage the overview of the migration, be able to see what you have migrated and why. And then we have the assessment that will give you information about how does this work out. And then it does contain a trial of the DevOps and the migration, so you can try to say, okay, let's just give it a try and see if it is creating something that will save us time. Then yeah, it should be pretty simple. If it saves you an hour of time for each IQ that you're migrating, then it is well worth the price of 100 euros per IQ. And then you also have the DevOps capability that you can observe or you can buy, that also gives you some more capabilities for this. Next week we have a session about Neo to Cloud Foundry, and this is obviously important if you are in the process of saying, hey, I need to upgrade here and I need to migrate, or got the integration suite, move it up there. And I think one of the large part of the reason why you want to do this is it's about cleaning up. If you have hundreds of different ways you have been dealing with things, being able to clean it up, transport it, then it just makes a lot of sense. So this is also leveraging a lot of the DevOps tool. We also have something about certificates, etc. So now it is time for Q&A. I hope you have a lot of good questions, so just put them into the chat. Are there anything I forgot to mention besides starting the recording? So you're ready to start over. But I think, yeah, I do hope that you also sign up for this session if you have not signed up. we will also, there's some other topics that is going to be interesting, so like DevOps for PI, and improving the developer experience for you as an organization. So if you have questions, you put them into the Q&A, and then I can try to answer them as well as possible. And yeah, the migration topic is obviously quite new, and it will evolve over the next year. And I think depending on the size of your landscape, you need to get started with this now. You may not need to migrate everything, but at least you need to have migrated the first couple of scenarios and have an idea about, is this, or what's the effort of it, and is this the way we want to go with it? I think that is at the minimum process you have, and obviously there is differences between the scope. So if you have over 500 interfaces, I would recommend that you migrate 50 to 100 interfaces. Try to operate them, try to see how they would interact in your system, and then from there you can then scale up and say, okay, there is some other scenarios that we want to be covering, and both get the experience about how to run this and how to support it, have an idea about the estimate. How much is this going to cost? Because we don't want to get to 27 or 30 and then you find out, oh, we have 2 or 5 more years of work to migrate all of these different scenarios. Any other questions? So let me see. Chat. But yeah, and then obviously there's some dependence like the integration cell, these kind of things that, or more improvement of the integration suite, and you need, I guess you need to migrate, and then you need to see, okay, based on this initial assessment, you need to understand when it makes sense. Then if you're on the other hand and just have like 100 interfaces, migration probably can wait because it is a fairly simple task then to migrate it. But on the other hand, the more time and effort you're putting into the PI, which is kind of a waste instead of just going to the target platform and just reduce the number of platforms that you have to one. Any other questions? We do have time for a few more questions. So let me see here. There was a lot of things that I did cover briefly. Because, yeah, so I think that, there, well, I don't know. There's actually a lot of differences, and this is part of making it easier for you to migrate. And this is what we have been thinking about, making the transition. Like when I showed you here how to do the migration, or from the overview, you can migrate it again with different setups, and see how this is going to work and what kind of scenarios we have. One thing we probably did not cover too much is we do have these XSLTs that allow us to convert PI communication channels to CPI communication blocks. And one of the things that we will be adding here in the next September release is the ability for you to take a deployed iFlow and use as a template. So that means that once you have figured out how to use the file or the FTP communication channel or SFTP, however you want to secure your FTP or the file conversion, you just go in and say, okay, this is my template for my file conversion and my FTP and my SFTP, and then all these will be handled in one specific flow. And this means that you do not need to go into all of the different channels. Once you have figured out how to convert the file channel, they would all then work in the same way. You may need to add the differences in the path or however that works. But there's going to be a guide that will show you how you can deal with these things. So check out what we have been delivering in the September release. But anyway, for now, I think the scope is a little out of reach for these. Yes, that is definitely a valid question. So there's a number of limitations. There's a limit on the number of GMS queues you have. I think a standard it is 40. Then you can increase it to 50 or 100 if I'm not completely wrong. And that was also the reason why we added this local processing option. I'd say that you can fairly easy just change this flow and say instead of the GMS, throw it to process direct, where you're saving this data in, and then have a process direct or also over here that are reusing some of these scenarios. And if that is something that is being requested, I think it is also pretty, or not a lot of work that is required to get that to work, because for some scenarios it makes it a lot easier to deal with it in this way. And this was also the reason that we did it with this GMS. And obviously you can skip the GMS and just have a normal error handling on it. But yeah, we wanted to have the retry on, and we wanted to make it so you did not need to develop a lot of resources on it. And I think one of the I don't know if there's one or more templates that SAP has produced where they do have retry or DMS queue in, then they will from up here take the HTTP or whatever the adapter, throw it into a GMS, and then you'd have a GMS that would process this message and send it out. But the challenge is then you are paying twice for the message, which will just add to the integration cost, and that is not any value. Does that answer your question, Sandeep? Because yeah, we want to make some integration that makes it easy for you to manage these things. And yeah, adding a generic scenario for this should be pretty simple. And also, we have also considered if process directs, no, not process direct, database connectivity, and that could also be in the same generic iFlow that you can say, set some property that will be set on the message and be delivered, saying that if it is this message, we want to deliver it to the process director, the GMS, and then we probably need to also improve the monitoring capabilities, so giving you a better way to say, okay, I want to retry this specific message, and then that would be retried. That is so yeah, a different way of handling this. So I think the idea would be that, for instance, if you have like a ERP system or an S4 system, and you want to call it with, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, you are looking to when you're sending to the receiving system, so the S4 system, and you will have a process direct URL that says deliver to the S4 system, use the DMS message and then handle it in that way. The way I would do that is I would just say, instead of having my IDOC communication channel, I would just create a mapping to either a GMS message that would send it into this generic queue for the ERP system, or I would from my IDOC system send it in. But I would probably create a conversion that takes the IDOC receiver adapter converted to a process direct, with probably some of the requirements that you have to send messages to this, and then you would have this generic iFlow as a separate entity that does not have anything to do with the migration, but just as a central way to handle these things. Is that what we were looking for, Sandeep? We can support the part about you saying that the file, so if it's supported, we can support the part about that the file is converted from, or the iDoc adapter is converted to a process director or GMS. That would be supported, but this generic iFlow, that is not something that we would manage. It would, well, the DevOps tool would obviously be able to manage it, but it would not be a part of the migration. The part of the migration is to take an input message, convert it into a format that can be delivered, and then you can put it into this generic process. Cool. Other questions? So yes, thanks for attending. I hope you have enjoyed this session. And yeah, you were the one that did it live. So let's see if someone else will be able to see this and get the value from this. Good. Anything else? Otherwise, I will say thanks for attending, and hope you have a good day. Thanks for